Hey, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is for you at this time. We're going to work on a lingual plate today, and I'm just going to do a quick video. So, like we have discussed in the past, default 4-degree blockout angle. I'm going to look at my path of insertion here. I'm looking at the distal guide plane here. I'm looking at how balanced this path of insertion is between these two uprights here and also this interproximal. So I'm going to bring this back maybe, I'm going to say 1 degree. Rotate this back. That looks good. Let's take a look at our blockout. All right, there we go. And you'll notice that at this step, we've already removed the wax. That's just because of the process that we do. We have people in lab that scan the cast first and then remove the wax, and then that passes along to our CAD team members. So that's why you're noticing when we jump ahead there, the wax removal is already done. So we're just going to touch anything up that we see that we need to. Just smoothing in between these interproximals, and then where this corner is going to wrap around a little there. This is a pretty basic lingual plate. The biggest thing I just wanted to show on this particular case was how we do the bar, the lingual, I'll say lingual bar, but it's really a plate, but it's a bar piece with the major connector. So like we've been doing on our previous free end saddles. Get this mapped out here. In this we have two options. You might have run into this problem. I'll say problem in the past. Is a little bit of a software, I'll say workaround, but I'll get to that in a second here. Get these holes, these half holes, kind of, I'll say cut off evenly there. Okay, so in this single, I'll say single anterior, you have some options. You could do this plain, what we call plain mesh, and sometimes 3Shape. In the really small areas like this, it doesn't always work with you and apply the major connector, but we're going to give it a try here and see if it will work. In these tight areas where we're just going to have one or two single holes, because we'll probably have one hole, another hole, and then a post. So you can see, obviously, we have this marked here for a post. So we're going to have that post placement in mind when we're doing this. We always have a post if there's a single tooth missing in an anterior space. So anywhere from 22 to 27, cuspid to cuspid. If there's one single tooth on a lower, we'll put a post. Same on an upper. 6 to 11, teeth number 6 to 11, those cuspids, a single anterior tooth missing, we'll do a post. Okay, so it applied there. And now, this is important. Select the plate, since we're doing a lingual plate. This is a lower profile bar piece than your traditional lingual plate part. So if you look at this, it's going to be different than if we did this. See how much wider your traditional lingual bar is. But we want the strength on the plate. So this is why we do that. Instead of just having only major connector, we've found that that isn't quite enough strength because our thickness ends up being approximately 0.6 millimeters total. So I'll select major connector here. And I use major connector because I know that this part will have a stipple pattern, and that will be I'll say pre-applied in the part when we get to the end. I get these just kind of have that nice, I'll say scalloped kind of U shape. They're usually drawn pretty well. We do, I'll say, accentuate that scallop just to give it that really nice kind of scrolling adaptation. If you're hearing construction beeping in the background, we're having the entire exterior of our building being repainted right now. So there's some background noise with big equipment, lifts, and things. Okay, so I'll look at this, I'll say radius, and get that to match there. Doesn't really matter where this is within the bar. Here, again, I'm making a little bit of a 90 step there. And even though this is drawn out a little further, I'm not going to fully bring it out because I'm not going to intentionally increase the space or the gap that's going to be created from the block out. So I'm going to come back and be just a hair off of this line intentionally. And like we discussed on the previous case, if you did watch that one, this is our most vulnerable area as we come through with the crib class to breakage. Make sure I have enough width here and also vertical height when we do sculpt for thickness. All right, let's see if this will apply. And there we go. Okay, it worked pretty well. Sometimes these little small areas we have trouble with, and then there's a workaround for that. So we'll take the fill piece, get rid of this. All right, so this bottom edge we want to look relatively straight, clean. I'll add another piece here for strength, where this finishing line will be. We definitely don't want any weakness there. All right, so this is a T-clasp that we have drawn here. There we go. So select my T-clasp. Again, you can see the scribe in the model that our designers have actually placed a mark in the model, like physically marked in the model. Then I select the actual arm. Note that there is a start and a finish, or a tip and a tail on this case. Notice how this is wide. I'm going to reverse that spline, and now see how it has that taper. That's what you want. and I bring this all the way through our mesh, and then I vertically bring this down flush through the meshwork. And as I approach the edge of the mesh here, we can keep this full height out here. Note that this T-bar arm in our library and DME has auto relief built into it, so you're going to have relief in addition to the blockout that was already there. So this arm is going to be pushed out, and then we're going to add this connector piece. Is what we do on T-bars and I-bars, or any really like an arm that's really far out extended from the partial, just to help us with manufacturing. We just do that on the T and the I-bars. One little trick that we've found is you get this, I'll say, not clean edge on your plane mesh part. So I'll take a fill piece, lay this, and then try to scroll this out. That's not working so well. So what I need to do is actually go back to my resin gap here. See if I can get this outer edge a little more even. That's really the best I can do. That resin gap is where it is. So I'm going to see if I can still clean that up at all. Yeah, that's a little better. But I did miss the acres here. I got to go back. All right, acres clasp. Again, bring it to the top of the drawing, and you'll see that scribe line. So I look at this edge, I'll say, right here. I look at the edge of this clasp meeting up with the edge of this major connector. Same thing here. I try to make that a smooth transition. There we go. This is a stage usually where we have multiple cases going. So we can hop to the other screen, keep going while this is loading. Okay. So this step, I'm just looking where my finishing lines are going to be. I know there's going to be a finishing line here, so I'm adding. And then right here is going to be a finishing line as well. Try to flatten this out a little bit. Add in this low spot just to bring that up. Same there. And I'm adding, 5 microns. I'm just very slowly adding in those low spots so that when I lay that finishing line, it just lays nice flat. And knock this down, remove this bar height right there, and smoothing tool. As you can tell, obviously they go green for smoothing, red for adding. minus is blue, removing. Okay, looks pretty good for our finishing lines to be laid there. Finishing line here. Make sure you have this finishing line facing the correct way. That's the incorrect way. This is the correct way. You can see this curve shape that's facing where the acrylic will go. Apologies if you guys know this information already. I'm actually using these videos for internal use as well for anybody new or training or working with. So on these very small, I'm gonna, bring this finishing line size down a little bit, just to make it fit in this space. I generally do not want to adjust the finishing line more than I have to. I want to keep it more, as close to the original size that is the default. It helps with manufacturing on our side. If we have a more of a predominant finishing line, it makes printing easier and more clean, so the result is better. So that's why we have that default finishing line that we use. Okay, so I'm looking at my thickness map at 1.0. I'm gonna just go around here and smooth my connections. Again, I'm at between 5 and 10 microns. When I do this, it's just very not aggressive, because you can really sculpt a lot quickly if you have your intensity too high. There you go. Bring this up to just starting to be in between green and red. If we can concave a rest, we will, if we have enough thickness, but I don't want to be too light. That's worse. Right there. Again, this is my weakest point. I make sure I have enough vertically here. I want this to be green as I'm coming through. I definitely don't want that light. That's where we have the most problems for breakage. And then very lightly, without taking off the, I'll say, definition of the finishing line, I add and blend around the finishing line. Just like that. Same with this rest. As we have coming up into this rest, I have enough strength to come up into it. And then I see if I can concave this rest at all and still be thick enough. Just like that. And then I blend where the bar meets the major connector. Just like that. Looks pretty good. I'm going to bring these up just to flush with the mesh. Probably brought them down a little bit too far. Make sure I have a good connection here coming into my saddle. And then I remove, I like to make this more of like a 90, if I can, like a 90-degree angle, if I can define this. We have plenty of width here. There's no strength issue. Okay, then I look at my stipple. Don't want stipple. I'm going to need to go to remove. I don't want stipple on my rests. I'm going to add a little bit just to clean up this bottom edge. Usually come down just a little onto the bar. There we go. Now I need to select my post. I'm going to start with my post first. Partial, post spring, view direction is always the easiest to put these on. I look at the incisal edge here of the tooth, line it up, and then I'm going to come down about 50%, so about half the height. One thing we really need on these posts is, I wish this would default, but we don't. You have to right click and add a base. We want to add a base on all posts because with metal printing, the way we manufacture, we need to support this part, and that helps those posts not break off. It's really, it's important for us. Our default hole size is 2 millimeters, but I know this is not going to be big enough, so I'm going to have to go to the 1.5. Again, view direction plus right there. And I don't really have enough space to get a hole out there, so I'm just going to leave the single one like that. And we are going to default to our 3 millimeter tissue stop right here. Even though it's not drawn, we always do a tissue stop, kind of, I'll say 50% on, 50% off. Then what we need to do is select this down to 1 millimeter, and we're going to do this post, I'll say, or connector I should call it, for manufacturing. This is a tight area, so this is a little difficult, but I'm just, again, making this to hold this post for manufacturing. A little connector to the top of the post, kind of do a little U shape coming to our plate. That'll be cut off when it's done. Our only pattern we ever use is stent supply. Pattern height should be defaulted to 0.08. Line spacer is always the 0.050. Let's do a preview. There we go. Stipple looks good. Our post connector is on. Look, make sure it's connected to the top of the post. Our connector is on the tip. We want it on the tip of the clasp, not like in the middle or right here. That just makes, again, manufacturing on our side difficult. We want it right to the tip of the clasp, coming up to the major connector at some point or some part. And that's it. Looks good. All right, thanks guys.